The alarm screamed through Prestige & Co. department store as Sienna Hayes, a young black woman with a vibrant afro, walked toward the exit. She froze, confused. Before she could even breathe, the security guard, Derek Patterson, charged at her like a predator. "Hands on your head, now!" His massive hand slammed her against the glass display case. 50 strangers stopped and stared. Smartphones rose, cameras pointed, recording her humiliation for the world to see. Derek ripped her purse from her shoulder and dumped everything onto the marble floor. Lipstick, keys, wallet, and the blouse she had just paid for, the receipt right there in the bag he refused to check. "I paid for this!" she cried out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Sure you did," Derek sneered. "You all say that." The store manager appeared, ice in her eyes. The verdict was already written on her face. Guilty. Before any evidence, before any proof. The color of Sienna's skin had condemned her before she ever walked through those doors. As Derek dragged her toward the back office, the glass entrance doors opened. And everything changed. A Korean man in a black suit stepped inside. Dragon tattoos crawled up his neck to his jawline. 2 men in suits followed behind him. The room went silent. Everyone felt it. The shift in power. The arrival of someone truly dangerous. Kang Min-Jun, the most feared crime boss on the West Coast, had just entered the building. And what he did next, what he revealed about the store, about Sienna, about the secret connection between them, it would expose everything and leave everyone speechless. Before we begin the story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, love, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The fluorescent lights of Prestige & Company department store hummed overhead as Sienna Hayes walked toward the exit, her shopping bag swinging gently at her side. She had spent the last hour carefully selecting a blouse for an important client meeting, something that made her feel powerful, professional. The price tag had made her wince, but she paid for it anyway. She deserved this. What Sienna didn't know was that Derek Patterson, the store security guard, had been watching her from the moment she entered. He had tracked her movements through the aisles, his eyes narrowing with each step she took. In his 15 years of security work, he had developed what he called an instinct. And his instinct was screaming now. As Sienna's foot crossed the threshold of the exit, the alarm exploded. The sound was deafening, piercing through the quiet luxury of the store like a gunshot. Sienna froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked down at her bag, confused. She had paid. She had the receipt right there in the bag. Before she could even process what was happening, Derek was on her.
"Hands on your head, now!"
His voice boomed across the store, and Sienna felt every eye turn toward her. Time seemed to slow as she saw smartphones rise, cameras pointing in her direction. 50 strangers, all watching, all judging. Derek's massive hand clamped around her arm, and he shoved her against the glass display case. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. She could feel the cold glass against her cheek, could see her own terrified reflection staring back at her. "I paid for this!" Sienna managed to say, her voice shaking but trying to stay strong. "The receipt is in the bag!" Derek didn't even look. He ripped her purse from her shoulder and dumped its contents onto the polished marble floor. Lipstick rolled across the ground. Her keys clattered. Her wallet fell open, revealing her driver's license, her face smiling up from a better day. And there it was, the blouse. Expensive fabric catching the light. The security tag still attached. "Sure you paid," Derek said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You all say that." Sienna felt something break inside her chest. Not fear. Something worse. Shame she didn't deserve to feel. The store manager appeared, a woman in a crisp white suit with eyes like ice. "Miss, we'll need to review the security footage in the office. Please cooperate and this will go smoothly." But Sienna could see it in the woman's eyes. The decision had already been made. Guilty. Before any footage was checked, before any receipt was found. The color of her skin had written the verdict before she ever entered this store. Derek's grip tightened on her arm as he began pulling her toward the back hallway. Sienna stumbled, trying to keep her dignity, trying not to cry in front of all these strangers who had already decided what kind of person she was. And then the glass doors at the entrance opened. Kang Min-Jun stepped inside. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply walked, each step deliberate and unhurried, like a man who had all the time in the world. Two men in dark suits followed behind him, their faces expressionless. The dragon tattoos crawling up Min-Jun's neck seemed to pulse in the harsh store lighting. Dark ink against pale skin, reaching up past his collar to his jawline. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than everything in Sienna's apartment combined. Every person in that store felt the shift in the air. The conversations stopped. The whispers died. Even Derek's grip on Sienna's arm loosened slightly as some ancient survival instinct kicked in, warning him that a predator had just entered the room. Min-Jun's eyes scanned the scene. The scattered contents of Sienna's purse on the floor, the security guard's hand on her arm, the crowd of onlookers with their phones out, recording someone else's humiliation for entertainment. His gaze finally landed on Sienna, and something in his expression softened, something only she could see, something that didn't belong on the face of a man whose reputation was built on fear. What none of them knew, not Derek, not the manager, not the crowd, was that 3 weeks ago, Sienna had sat across from Min-Jun in a small cafe and asked him about his day like he was just another person. Not a monster, not a business opportunity. Just a lonely man who needed someone to see him as human.
Take your hands off her.
Min-Jun's voice was low, barely above a conversational tone, but it cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Derek turned, confusion crossing his face.
Who the hell are you?
Min-Jun ignored the question entirely. His eyes remained locked on Sienna, and he spoke again, this time in Korean, his voice gentle. "Are you hurt?" Then, in English, for everyone to hear, "Are you okay?" Sienna blinked, her mind struggling to connect the man she had coffee with, the one who laughed at her terrible jokes about design software and asked genuine questions about her childhood, with this figure of silent, terrifying authority standing before her now. I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice betrayed her. Derek's grip on her arm tightened, his authority challenged in front of an audience. "She's a theft suspect. Step back or I'm calling the police." Min-Jun took one step forward, just one, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Call them," he said simply. The store manager rushed forward, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but this is store business. We have protocols."
This store?
Min-Jun interrupted, pulling his phone from his inside jacket pocket with movements so controlled they seemed choreographed.
Just became my business. I signed the papers 20 minutes ago.
The words hung in the air like smoke. No one breathed. Min-Jun turned his phone screen toward the manager. On it, a legal document displayed the Prestige & Company logo at the top, layers of legal language in the middle, and at the bottom, a digital signature that read, Kang Min-Jun, majority shareholder. The manager's face went from pale to gray. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out.
Derek's hand fell from Sienna's arm as if her skin had suddenly become molten metal. Min-Jun pocketed his phone and turned his full attention to Derek. The security guard was a big man, former police officer,
Used to being the most intimidating person in any room. But standing before Min-Jun, he suddenly looked small.
"You have 10 seconds to apologize to her," Min-Jun said. "I was just doing my job," Derek started. 9. "The alarm went off. Procedure says 8. Sweat began to bead on Derek's forehead. He looked at Sienna, then back at Min-Jun, then at the crowd that had grown larger, phones still recording everything. "I'm sorry," Derek stammered. I apologize, ma'am. I was following protocol." Min-Jun's expression didn't change. "You're fired. Collect your things and leave." "You can't just," Derek began, but one of Min-Jun's men stepped forward, and whatever Derek saw in that man's eyes made him stop talking immediately. He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the silent store,
Each one sounding like the death march of his career. Min-Jun turned to the manager, who looked like she might faint.
"Review your security footage. Find out why that alarm went off. If it was a system malfunction, replace the entire system by tomorrow. If someone tampered with it, I want their name, their home address, and their employment history on my desk by tonight." The manager nodded so hard her neck might have snapped. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir. I'll personally—" "Go," Min-Jun said quietly. She went. The crowd began to disperse, sensing the show was over, though phones were still recording, uploading, sharing the footage across social media even as they walked away. By tonight, this moment would have 10,000 views. By tomorrow, 1,000,000. Min-Jun knelt down and began gathering Sienna's scattered belongings.
His tattooed hands that had signed orders for things Sienna didn't want to imagine, carefully picked up her lipstick, her keys, her wallet. He placed each item back in her purse with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a man like him. When he stood and handed her the purse, Sienna was shaking. Not from fear, from something else entirely. A cocktail of shock, rage, confusion, and something she couldn't quite name. "You bought the store," she said, and even she could hear the disbelief in her own voice. "You bought an entire department store. For me." Min-Jun's expression remained neutral.
"It was a good investment opportunity."
"Min-Jun." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for just a moment the mask slipped. For just a second, she saw the man from the cafe, the one who told her about growing up in Seoul, about his mother's kimchi recipe, about feeling invisible even when everyone feared him. "No one puts their hands on you," he said quietly. "No one." 3 days passed before Sienna agreed to see him again. 3 days of her phone ringing constantly. 3 days of text messages she didn't answer. 3 days of sitting in her small apartment, staring at her laptop screen, reading article after article about Kang Min-Jun. The Soul Dragon, they called him. Leader of one of the most powerful Korean organized crime syndicates on the West Coast. Money laundering, protection rackets, underground gambling operations. The articles were filled with speculation, allegations, rumors that could never be proven in court. Witnesses who disappeared. Evidence that vanished. A man who operated in shadows so deep that even when people knew what he was, they could never touch him. And yet, when she closed her eyes, all she could see was the man who had asked her, genuinely curious, why she chose design over fine art. The man who listened when she talked about growing up in foster homes, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. The man who had shared his own loneliness without ever saying the word. On the 4th day, she texted him back. One word. "Where?" That evening, she found herself on a private rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that no designer could quite capture. Min-Jun stood at the edge, his back to her, hands in his pockets, looking out over the sprawling metropolis below. "Why did you do it?" Sienna asked, her voice carrying across the empty space between them. Min-Jun didn't turn around. "Do what?" "Don't play games with me, not after everything I've read, not after what I know now." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Why did you buy that store?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Because you treated me like a person, not like a monster, not like a business transaction. You laughed at my terrible jokes, you asked me about my mother, you wanted to know what I dreamed about when I was a child." Sienna felt tears burning behind her eyes. "And that's worth millions of dollars to you? A department store?" Min-Jun turned to face her then, and she saw something raw in his expression, something vulnerable that didn't belong on the face of the soul dragon. "When you grow up in my world, you learn quickly that everyone has a price. Everyone wants something. Power, money, protection, revenge. Everyone comes to me with their hands out, expecting, demanding, taking." He took a step toward her. "But you just wanted coffee and conversation. You saw me sitting alone, and you smiled. A real smile. Not the kind people give me when they're afraid or when they want something. You saw a lonely man, and you offered him kindness." "I didn't know who you were," Sienna whispered. "Exactly," Min-Jun said. "You didn't know, and that made it real. For 3 weeks, I got to be just Min-Jun. Not the dragon, not the boss, just a man having coffee with a beautiful woman who made him feel human again." Sienna wiped at her eyes angrily. "I can't be part of your world. I can't be with someone who—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I know," Min-Jun said, and the acceptance in his voice broke something in her chest. "I'm not asking you to be part of my world. I would never ask that of you. Your world is full of color and creation and light. My world is dark and violent and cold." He moved closer, close enough that she could see the intricate details of the dragon tattooed on his neck, each scale rendered in perfect detail, the creature's mouth open in a silent roar, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. "I'm just asking," he said quietly, "that you let me exist in your world sometimes. Even if it's just for coffee. Even if it's just for an hour where I can pretend I'm someone different." Sienna looked up at him. This dangerous man who had bought a store just to protect her dignity. And she felt her resolve crumbling. "You can't just buy your way into people's lives, Min-Jun." "I know," he said, "but I can buy away the things that hurt you. I can make sure that what happened in that store never happens to you again. I can use my power for something good, for once in my miserable life." Sienna laughed then, a broken sound somewhere between a sob and genuine amusement. "You just bought an entire department store for me. I don't think you understand how to exist in normal people's worlds." Min-Jun smiled, and it transformed his face completely. The dangerous edge softened, and for a moment, she saw the boy he must have been before the tattoos, before the violence, before the world taught him that power was the only language anyone understood. "Then teach me," he said simply. "Show me how normal people live. Show me what it's like to be someone who doesn't have blood on his hands." "I can't erase what you've done," Sienna said. "I can't pretend I don't know who you are now." "I'm not asking you to," Min-Jun replied. "I'm asking you to see both things at once, the monster and the man. And maybe, if you can do that, I can start to believe that I'm more than just the dragon." Sienna felt herself wavering. felt the wall she had built over the past 3 days beginning to crack. She thought about the foster homes, about always being the girl who didn't quite fit, who was never chosen, never kept. She thought about building her entire life around being independent, around never needing anyone because no one had ever stayed. And here was a man offering to stay. A dangerous, violent, powerful man who could destroy her world with a single word, but also a man who had seen her humiliation and responded not with pity, but with action. A man who understood what it meant to be invisible even when everyone was looking at you. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I let you into my life, you have to promise me something." "Anything," Min-Jun said immediately. "Don't lie to me. Ever. I've spent my whole life with people who lied. People who said they'd keep me and didn't. People who said they cared and disappeared. If you're going to be in my world, I need the truth. Always. Even when it's ugly. Even when it's dangerous." Min-Jun held her gaze, and she saw the weight of that promise settling on his shoulders. "I can do that. But the truth is ugly, Sienna. My world is ugly. Are you sure you want to see it?" "I don't want to see your world," she said. "But I want to see you. The real you, not the version you show your enemies or your associates. Just you." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip gentle despite the strength she knew lay beneath it. "Then we build something new. Not my world, not yours. Something in between. Something that's just ours." Sienna looked down at their joined hands, dark skin against pale, her fingers intertwined with his. It should have felt wrong. Everything about this should have felt wrong. But instead, it felt like the first right thing that had happened to her in years. "Okay," she whispered. "We try. But Min-Jun, if you ever—" "I won't," he said, and there was steel in his voice. "You're the only good thing in my life. I won't destroy that. I won't destroy you." They stood there as the sun finished setting, the city lights beginning to glow below them like scattered diamonds. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. What Sienna didn't know, what Min-Jun would never tell her until much later, was that his phone had buzzed 3 times during their conversation. 3 messages from his lawyer. The first confirming that all paperwork was complete. The second confirming that ownership had been transferred. The third simply reading, "It's done. The store is in her name now." Min-Jun had never intended to keep Prestige & Company for himself. The moment he signed those papers, the moment he walked through those glass doors and saw Derek's hand on Sienna's arm, he knew exactly what he would do. He would buy the store. He would fire everyone who had humiliated her. And then he would give it all to her. Every brick, every display case, every square foot of marble flooring. He would put it in her name, make her the owner, ensure that she would never walk into that building as anything less than the most powerful person in the room. Because that's what love looked like in his world. Not flowers or chocolates or pretty words, but power transferred, protection guaranteed, and a world reshaped so that the person you loved would never hurt again. The dragon on his neck seemed to glow in the fading light as he held Sienna's hand, and for the first time in his violent life, Kang Min-Jun felt something close to peace. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before anyone knew your worth? Have you ever witnessed someone being treated as less than human because of how they look? And in a world that teaches us to seek power and status, would you recognize real love if it came from the most unexpected place? Share your experiences and feelings in the comments below. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, redemption, and seeing the humanity in everyone, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.